Greetings, Blood Bowlers, and welcome to the All or Nuffle podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Blood Bowl.
Greetings, Blood Bowlers, and welcome back to another episode of All or Nuffle. My name is Baz, as you will already know by now, and tonight I'm joined by Gary again. Say hello, Gary.
Hello, Gary.
You may notice that we are missing one. Steve is not with us tonight. We had a couple of scheduling issues on my side to getting this recorded, and I wanted it recording before the weekend, and unfortunately, Steve was not available tonight, and I was going to be rough on time for the rest of the week. So we're recording today without him, but he's here in spirit, I'm sure, Gary.
I have a cardboard cutout of him, a full life size, next to me. I haven't actually. That would just be a bit weird, wouldn't
it? It would certainly escalate the stalker vibes. So, first of all, mate, since we last got together to speak on a podcast, and the last time we did speak on a podcast, we were all riding the high of post-Bugman's Belter. You have since played at another tournament, and we spoke about it a little bit, and it wasn't necessarily a good Blood Bowl day for you, but I assume you still had a fantastic fun day, in terms of
I had a fantastic
socialising
day,
with
yeah.
people.
I had a great day. How
did you get on then, mate?
How did I get on? I was no losses, one draw and two. Sorry, no wins, one draw, two losses.
And you took Lizardmen, I do believe you said.
Took Lizardmen, and I played against Amazons, Skaven. No. Amazons, Skaven, and Vampires.
Oof, that's a pretty that's a rough mixture of teams to come against. To be fair, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. It was. What's the words I'm looking for? It was character building, and I didn't start the day off too well. So when I've been going to these, I've only, like everyone knows, right? And I said it last time. I've only been playing for just under a year, and I'm very, very wet behind the ears when it comes to Blood Bowl. But I just really, really enjoy it, and I love the social side of it. And I go with my mate Brian, who comes from Barnstaple, and I'm just north of Exeter. So we went over to Wareham in, I think it's the other side of Dorset from us. The tournament was called the School of Hard Blocks 3, which I'm assuming it's the third one they've had.
Yeah.
It was the second tournament in the Southwest tournament series, which there is, I think, about 10 tournaments going on this year. Did all right. The guy who beat me with Amazons, I got a 2-1 against him. He did really well. He finished in the top 5, possibly in the tournament. I don't know.
How many people were there altogether?
28.
That's not too bad. That's not bad, really.
Yeah,
that's really good numbers for like a local tournament. Well, not a local tournament, but a more regional tournament.
It was really funny actually because there was quite a few guys there, or maybe I just bumped into them. I don't know. Maybe I was doing my stalker thing, but there was quite a few guys there who were tournament organisers. So the guys from Threadball were there. The guys from I think the guys from or some of the main players from Threadball maybe. The guys from the Yeovil Cake or Death, which is full, because we wanted to get to that, but we couldn't. That they were there, and there was just a really, really good vibe. I think we rocked up and we thought, I wonder what this is going to be like. And actually, everyone was super nice. The only drama I had was we got there well within 20 minutes, half an hour early, sitting around chilling, and I opened up my new Charlie Victor case with all my stuff in it. Opened it upside down, everything went everywhere.
Oh,
models broken, everything, mate. I was not a happy bunny. Brian rescued me. He did me good. He got me some glue. He stuck all my things back together. One of them was a little bit like he was half cocked. He was wandering around in circles a little bit. But I had so the thing I learnt, first of all, make sure you open your boxes and your cases up the right way around. Only an idiot wouldn't do that. And I think we all know, but bring spares and bring super glue to these tournaments.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I learned the hard way. But I had really good fun.
I suppose we could kind of use that as a bit of an excuse for the Lizardmen's performance that day, really.
Well, I didn't want to talk about it, but I think they were injured. They were a little bit handicapped. I think all of those 3 players were lucky that they were injured before they started playing. Otherwise, I would have won all 3 games, I think.
So what do we think? Because lizardmen generally are a team that a lot of people will get matched up against and maybe think, oh God, lizardmen, you got that speed of the skinks, and then you got the strength of the saurus blockers. What is it? Do you think went wrong on that specific day for you? Was it your opponents were maybe more experienced than yourselves? Were the dice not on your side? Were it your own inexperience with that specific team? Do you think there are any factors that attributed to your lack of success on the day, for lack of a better phrase?
Yeah, no. I reckon all of the above. All of the above. And it was little bits of all of it. I think one of the things you didn't mention was, I think with lizardmen, and I've thought about it afterwards. I think with lizardmen, the benefit of lizardmen is you've got these 6 sauruses, right, that are high strength, good armor value, and you've got a proc score. So you've got 7, good strength players, and you've got some skinks.
Yeah,
I think what I let myself do is I let myself get dragged out of position. All my guys were in different parts of the field, and I needed to keep my lizards together. From a value point of view, I think that a lot of the teams were pulling sauruses out of place with like linemen and the like. So, and it's back to the drawing board, and I enjoyed myself. So I had a 2-1, I think it was a 2-1 loss against the Amazons in the first game. I had a 3-0 loss against Skaven. Oh my God, you make mistakes against Skaven, then they just grab the ball and go, don't they?
Yeah, I think they are probably one of the worst teams for punishing your mistakes.
Yeah, and I made quite a few of them, if we're completely honest.
Yeah, if you get your positioning slightly off, or if your ball carrier is not totally protected, and then drops the ball, they expose that so easily. It's crazy.
Yeah. And what was the last game? The last game, I think, was against Vampires. He was a new guy as well. He'd been in it less time than I had, and we just had shits and giggles, if I'm completely honest.
The day's nearly done. It's last game. Let's have fun.
Yeah, we were both down on one of the bottom tables. I don't think we were on the bottom table, but we were on one of the bottom tables, and it was 1-1. He somehow managed. I could have stalled, and I bloody didn't, because it wasn't a conscious thing this time. It was just I just want to play a game, and if you draw, you draw. It's not, I don't care.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that. But results aside, you've said you had a good day, so all in all, it's a win in it, really, mate.
I was really knackered, and I think they had a lot of, what's the word, beige food was the spread that we had. It was a really good buffet, but there's lots of bread and pastries and that stuff. So on the way back, I was a little bit. It's an hour and a half drive. So Brian, I nearly had to ask Brian to pull over to say, mate, I might need a bit of fresh air, but we managed. We got there in the end. He has another hour to drive after he drops me off, so fair play to him.
Yeah, so it's a good job you weren't sick in his car then and left him in it, and he's on his own for an hour.
I don't think he would have been annoyed. I think he'd have pointed and laughed at me. It's that kind of relationship we've got.
Brilliant. So, segueing into the topic of this episode, me and you, Gary, had a conversation about future episodes of All or Nothing, and we spoke at length about next steps. When somebody has, let's just say, got a pitch, got all the stuff they need to play, they've learned or got a firm enough grasp on the core rules of the game, and they're confident with the rules specific to their team. Then we were like, what is the next step? How do you, if you're the sort of person who wants to improve the game and maybe become a little bit more competitive with how you play, what are the next steps? And we had a huge list of different stuff, didn't we, mate? But I think
we got loads. We can't do it all, can we?
Yeah. No, we can. And I think this one that we're going to talk about today is an important one, because we're going to speak about risk management. And I want to start off by really talking about risk management in general, not specific to Blood Bowl or tabletop gaming at all, because we all do risk management every day of our lives.
Yeah.
In just really mundane activities. So perfect examples are probably not a good example in terms of safety and good driving etiquette, but sometimes you might think to yourself, oh, right, I'm on my way to work, I'm running a little bit late, can I stop off to get a coffee and still get there on time? No, that thought process of, bargaining with your time is in essence, it's risk management, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
And then I'm sure that obviously we've just spoke before we started recording about you working in data, and obviously data a lot of the time, especially in corporate settings, is used to determine, not necessarily risk, but data is often used to figure out how successful something is or could be, which in itself is risk management, because companies are looking at that data to avoid taking maybe a loss on something. Yeah,
risk management is literally
exactly
everywhere. We don't even know we're doing it half the time, because you step out your front door and you put one foot in front of the other, and you are managing risks around you all the time. I think the problem with and I know we'll go into it a bit more, but the difference is with Blood Bowl, so I think we do a lot of it for fun, and I think the more and more you do it, you've probably got this over me because you've been doing it for a few more years than I have. I don't naturally sort of subconsciously know that this is the right way to do this and this is the right way to do this, because I'm still learning at the moment. And you do a lot of that risk management from your previous mistakes that you've made.
Absolutely, yeah. If you've tried something before and it maybe costs you a game, the next time it comes to that scenario, you're going to think, right, let me approach this differently, and that's risk management.
Yeah, unless you're me and you just make the same mistakes again.
So that leads us nicely onto risk management as it relates specifically to Blood Bowl. Now, for me, when I think of risk management related to Blood Bowl, it always boils down to two different things, and it's a balance between turn completion, and avoiding a turnover. And obviously, they go hand in hand, because you've got to avoid a turnover to get turn completion. And by turn completion, what I mean is, everybody that you want to move has moved. Everybody that you want to block has blocked. You've used any of the once per turn actions, such as a blitz, a foul, a pass, whatever, that you want to use, and you are totally satisfied that you can hand over your turn with everything that you wanted to be done within that turn being done.
Yeah.
And
a lot of the time as well, I think you've got to plan for you will not complete a lot of turns.
Correct. And I was just about to say, and the reason that goes hand in hand with turnovers is because while you're trying to achieve that turn completion, you've got to be aware that at any stage throughout that turn, for every action that you do, something could go wrong and you could turn over to your opponent. And that's why it's so important that when you're making those decisions, again, this risk management, it's bearing in mind that, right, I'm about to commit to this action. This action could go wrong and lead to my opponent taking control of the game. Am I happy with how my team's laid out, where the ball is? Like, have I got any gaps that they can expose? Am I happy that there's nothing like that before there is a potential turnover? Like, you've always got to prepare for there to be a turnover at any moment, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's if you're playing 11s and you've got 11 people on the pitch, you've got 11 people to plan things with, and you've got to pick an order in which you're going to do all of those. And a lot of the time, it's not clear cut. It's not like, oh, well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It'd be lovely if it was. Sometimes it's right, I'm going to do those two first, but this third one could be that one or that one, depending on the outcome, could be where I'm going to go 5th and 6th.
Exactly.
So there's a whole bunch of decision making you've got to make, and I think what we're going to do is try to break that down and show people how to make it a little bit easier when it looks a little bit confusing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a phrase that you'll see a lot in many Blood Bowl communities, whether it's Reddit, groups on Facebook, whatever. When people talk about risk management in Blood Bowl, you will see the phrase "safest moves first." And I think that's a really good way to teach newer players to approach risk management. It's starting with the things that are of least risk to you, because when you start down that end of the scale, the likelihood of a turnover is less, and then the chance of a turnover increases. So you naturally, if you follow safest moves first and then go up in ascending order in terms of how risky it is, you're always going to, obey that turnover for longer. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And some of those safest moves come with zero risk. They are
Yeah.
things that you can do for free that if you didn't do them and you cause a turnover before you do those free moves, you're actually going to be kicking yourself because you're going to be like, oh, and I've done it loads of times.
So
I should have stood that one up. I should have stood that one up. I should have moved that one over there. And now what I did is I went in for the big balls block. I stuck my willy on the table and I was like, yeah, I'm taking this big man down. 2 dice block, I'm having it. And I get double skulls, re-roll double skulls, and you're like, shit, what did I do that for?
So you've just hit nail on the head. For me, the two safest things that you can do at the beginning of a turn, unless there is a specific chain of events that needs these to happen in a different order, is the first things I'm going to do is stand anybody up that I am happy to just stand up and do nothing else with for the rest of the turn, and move anybody who hasn't got to roll any dice to move.
Cool. And when does that become a little bit complicated? Because I play a lot of bashy teams. So for me, standing people up who are based while they're on the floor is really easy because I stand them up and I know I'm not going to dodge. But sometimes if you're playing some of these dodgy teams, you might not want to just stand a gutter runner up. You might want to stand him up and move him somewhere. So,
absolutely. So
you're adding a bit of risk to it, aren't you?
Exactly. And that's where, so obviously I've just said, standing anybody up that you don't want to do anything with or moving without rolling dice. That is like your first tier. Then your next tier would, for me, well, this is just the way that I would process. The thought process for me would be in a turn. Everybody's different. We all, as brains, all work differently. So this might not be for everyone. But for me, next, it would be, mainly because I play a lot of agility teams, the next safest option for me is, right, what moves have I got that do require agility rolls? Playing elves and things like that. If you've got a dodge through tackle zone into open, you're looking at a 2+, a 3+ just through one tackle zone. So those for me are not as risky as what they are for people who play other teams. And obviously you mentioned standing people up. Like, again, I play elves. The armor's not very high. If I've stood a war dancer up in front of a big un blocker for orcs, I will probably think about, right, I'm going to stand him up, use his remaining movement to dodge him away so he's not in base contact. So if anybody wants to hit him next turn, they've got to use a blitz. So although they're not that risky, because they require some dice rolling, they are just by nature more risky than, though, as you put it, those free moves and those free standing ups. You know what I mean? Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah, and do you have on a lot of your dashy teams? Do you have a lot of dodge?
So a lot of people are surprised that, because my main team is Wood Elves, the Wood Elf linemen, they come with no skills at all, nothing.
Okay, so like
2+ agility, but no skills. But it's when you get to the things like the catchers and the war dancers that do have dodge. So though dodges with those guys are even less risky, because if I fail the first one, I get a free reroll. Really, it's when you start to talk about like different teams and how some things for one team are risky, but for another team they might not be. That's when this idea of risk management can become like, it's a bit of a rabbit hole, isn't it, mate?
Oh, it's just, mate, we could. Mate, when I chat to Brian when we're moving between tournaments and going doing D&D and all that sort of stuff, we've said plenty of times we need to go on 4 or 5 hour road trips, right? Just because we just talk so much shit to each other, we get where we're going and we're like, we haven't finished what we're talking about. I don't really want to do the thing that we've driven to do. I want to carry on talking. And you could just talk about this one topic forever. And I think Blood Bowl, I think the reason why I've become so addicted to it is because it's the gift that keeps giving. I think I mentioned last time, I'm 53. I found Blood Bowl less than a year ago, and I feel like I've wasted 50 years of my life not playing Blood Bowl because I've got a hobby that could easily, in the time it takes me to learn it properly and get okay at it, it could easily take me 10 years, easily.
Oh God, yeah, and do you know what? Yeah. Even then, there's still stuff to learn.
Yeah, and I think there always is, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And
So we've
I
done
think
our free movements and we've done
we have.
our dodges. What comes next?
For me, again, I'm going to preface this with this is just how my brain works. It might not be for everyone. For me, it's probably a combination of um, blocks
Yeah.
and maybe depending on where I've moved people, a blitz action would happen on the same level of risk for me personally.
Hmm. Do you mind because I play so differently than you do? Do you mind me sort of going back to the beginning again and telling you what I do
Yeah, go for it.
and
Yeah,
how I
absolutely.
and I think this is probably why I'm so slow when I'm playing. I need to get faster at it, but I'm still working and calculating quite a lot of things. So when I
Yeah,
look at the board, the first thing I do when it's my turn is I look at each of my players and I go, right, what are my options? And
right.
I
Okay.
genuinely don't even know a lot of the time what my options are. So
Right.
standing things up, I sometimes don't just do that naturally. I sometimes waste a lot. So I'm looking at 11 players, and I think what you're saying is that if you just take some of your free movements where you know you're not going to do, it's less things for you to think about.
Absolutely. And I think something that might help you with that, Gary, is, and I mean this in like the least patronizing way
No,
possible,
no, no, please.
is when your opponent is playing their turn, start planning your turn out immediately. So if they move a player into a channel that was that's not currently blocked, or it's an open channel for them to run down, you can think, right, that channel needs blocking next turn. Which of my guys, based on the current position, would be the best to move there? And
Okay.
obviously, some of your players might get knocked down or whatever because it's still your opponent's turn, but constantly have it ticking over in your mind like, right, I want to move this player into that position to block that channel that they're planning on taking advantage of. And
So
then later in the turn, that player gets blitzed, and you go, right, that player can't fill that gap anymore, this next one can. Basically, start building a blueprint for
yeah,
your upcoming turn by by using the actions that your opponent's currently taking in theirs. And it's not a waterproof method, because sometimes, as you're doing that, you might build a perfect blueprint, and then something will happen at the end of your opponent's turn that just has to take priority over everything.
yeah.
So it's not a step-by-step guide, but I always try to build a framework of what my next turn is going to look like based on what my opponent's doing as they're doing it.
No, cool. I get it. I think again, note to self, rather than wasting that person's turn waffling away to them and chatting and enjoying myself, actually engage in the game a little bit more and actually start thinking about what's going on.
Yeah, and do you know what? The perfect example is, though, Gary, you've even said to, I don't think we said it on a podcast. I think we were talking privately, and you used it as, compared it to chess, and how many more potential moves there is, and how many potential factors there is in Blood Bowl compared to chess.
Mm. Yeah.
Think of it like that. Like, you see people playing chess, when their opponent's taking their turn, they've got their eyes locked on every move they make.
And I think they're probably thinking, 5, 6, 7, 8 moves ahead, purely because you can do that. I don't think you can. I don't think you can do that with any certainty in Blood Bowl because there's
No,
so much randomness to it,
no,
isn't there?
not at all. And like I say, even if you try to think a turn in front, which is what I tried to do, like I said, something could happen at the very end of your opponent's turn, and any of that blueprint building you've done in your mind up to that point is out the window, because something's just come up that means you've got to put all your focus into that. Whether it's, I don't know, maybe right at the very end of the turn, they move their ball carrier down the pitch, but they've left him in the square closest to the sideline. So now, naturally, your entire thought process for your next turn is, right, how do I get enough people down that pitch to offer assists, and who's going to blitz him to kick him into crowd?
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to what we were saying about chess, I think I've just remembered what I say. I've just remembered. I've just googled up the thing that I got it from. In chess, you have about 30 branches on average for each move. So you could end up in 30 different places each move.
Yeah,
With Go, the pebbles,
yeah.
the Chinese stone game, there is 300 options every go.
Wow.
With Blood Bowl, right? This is how bonkers this is. It's 10 to the 30 possible different outcomes per turn. So that's
Wow.
a 1 followed by 30 zeros.
Jesus.
And some estimates, it says here, put another 20 zeros on the end of that. So the numbers are just mind-blowingly big for the amount of options that you've got in Blood Bowl.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
So risk management has got to be as well about just having some sort of structure to be able to go, how do I organise how I'm going to approach this?
Yeah, and I think in the same breath as well, though, Gary, it's important to acknowledge that there may be people listening to this who start this episode thinking, "Oh, do you know what? I've learned the core rules. I'm pretty familiar with my team. I'm up for taking next steps." And they might hear risk management and think, "Oh God, no, fuck that. That's way too much work."
Yeah,
And they might just think,
it
"No,
doesn't
I'm
need
going
to
to
be
keep.
that
I'm going to keep."
complicated. It's just a how do you approach it? How do you go from knowing the basic rules and turning up and playing and how do you start to add a bit of structure to your game? Next
Yeah,
steps, because that's where I am at the moment. I think I can do the basic stuff. I'm just learning about risk management and the order to do things. The problem I have is I go off tilt. You know how with poker players sometimes they see the big money or they get the good hand and go
yeah.
off completely away from their plan. That's me. I'm just I just like woo. I
Yeah,
just
you,
totally
you, you
forget what
see
I'm
that
doing.
you see that ball get dropped in their backfield, and you're immediately thinking, right, how do I get somebody on that immediately?
Yeah, I don't even have a structure or a plan. I'm just absolutely. I am the Andrex puppy of Blood Bowl.
And it's
Right?
important to realise that you don't need that structure to enjoy Blood Bowl. But the point we're trying to make is that if you do want to take those next steps to playing a little bit more competitively, and I don't mean like, building yourself up to be playing and winning at tournaments, but just for your own, like, satisfaction to be able to improve your capabilities at Blood Bowl, I think that this is a good place to start. But I want to,
Use some of these or even just think about try some of this stuff out.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
even if somebody takes nothing at all from this episode, other than the words risk management, and the next time they're going to the game, they're thinking, right, risk management, and they think about it a totally different way to me. At least they know the next stage is risk management, and they can do that in whatever way they want, and then it'll be a
absolutely.
matter of trial and error for them. I tried this way of risk management, that didn't really pay off, and I think that's half the fun of Blood Bowl, because the trial and error is such a big part of it, like even down to like what team you take. The conversation, my favorite conversation in Blood Bowl are when you have a conversation before a tournament or before a league, and you and one of the other participants might be talking about, oh, what team are you taking? And it's like, right, we're going to take this, but instead I've dropped one of these and I've took an extra reroll,
Or
and me thinking
rosters. Yeah.
exactly, and me thinking behind it is this. The stuff like that, the all trial and error and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work.
This is the thing about Blood Bowl, isn't it? It just gives you so many different facets. Like there are some people that absolutely are into painting models and getting a perfectly painted model onto the table.
Yeah.
There are some people that are super serious about the rules. Risk management is again just another facet of all of this. Some people are there for the social and don't care. Some people like playing stunty teams and expect to lose all the time.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of various different reasons why different people play Blood Bowl.
And I think
risk management is one of those things where if you want to get better than being at a basic level, you've got to starting to think about just reducing your risks, taking your less risky options first and leaving your more risky stuff towards the end.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to that balance of risk management is, in essence, it's keeping that turnover at bay for as long as possible so you can complete your turn as best as possible. And obviously, by complete your turn, we mean activating as many people as possible before a turnover or handing over your turn, using as many of your actions that you've got available, whether it's special action, blitzers, and all that business. And again, it's all about planning out your turn for me. That's ultimately what it boils down to.
And you need to plan it out, because I think we sort of suggested that people stand their things up blindly as a first move. or stand their things up and move things around, blindly. And actually, what we're saying is, if you've got a 1 dice block somewhere, and you could move somebody in for a 2 dicer, then absolutely, as a free movement, move the person in.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in the same breath, you can also say, but as another aspect of risk management is, right, we could move this player in to turn that into a 2 dice block. But if I move that player from over here, that leaves a channel for my opponent to expose and potentially score down next turn. Like, it really is. It's sort of like negotiating with yourself a little bit, isn't it?
Oh, mate, I just get bored halfway through, and that's why I go off tilt so much. Mate, we better get back on track, So we've stood people up, right? We've moved free. We've done all the free movement, right? And you've done a little bit of the less riskier standing people up and potentially dodging out with re-rolls or no re-rolls.
Yes.
What's next? What do people need to be thinking about next?
So for me, at this point, this is where I would look at my team and just double make sure that I am totally happy with how everything is, just in preparation that this next action may cause a turnover. Am I happy for my opponent to take control of the game with how my team is currently set out? And
so
if the answer
Andy
to that
Davo,
is yes, go on, mate.
No, I was going to say Andy Davo, and I've been listening to his stuff. He always says, and I don't know if he does. Maybe this is what I've heard, and I'm repeating it wrongly. But the thing that's always landed with me from watching his videos is the ball safe, and where's my blitz? So when it's the beginning of your turn and you've got all your free movements and you're considering all of those, always think about, is the ball safe, regardless of whether you've got it or they've got it. So if they've got it, is their ball safe? How can you make it not so safe? And if you've got it, is the ball safe? If all of this fails, is the ball safe? Well, if it isn't, then you probably need to be making it safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where's the blitz? You only get 1 blitz, so where is the blitz?
Mm-hmm. And not only where is the blitz, but who's going to make the blitz? Like, not only do you have to consider who is best off being the target of your blitz, but is there a player of yours that is better off doing the blitz than another, whether it's down to positioning or skills, things like that?
Yeah.
That's actually a really good way of putting it, like, to make sure that the ball is safe or making it unsafe, for your opponent, and keeping that. Because let's face it, no matter how many different actions there are, the one that you definitely want to use every turn is the blitz, isn't it?
It's a waste if you don't, isn't it?
Correct. And I guarantee that a player who makes sure they use their blitz action every single turn wins more games than somebody who forgets to do the blitz action a third of the time. Definitely. Gotta be.
They've got to. Yeah, you've got to. Because effectively what you're doing, and I had this conversation, I joke about at the table sometimes, as you can well imagine, that if you don't use your blitz, you should be able to carry it forward and use 2 blitzes on the next go. But yeah, nobody's let me do that yet so far. I don't know why.
Hey, you might find this interesting. This is really off topic, but I flirted with the idea because I'm currently running a league. I'm not playing in it. I'm just commissioner. And the idea is that each round, so there's 9 rounds. Each round takes place in a different part of the known world, like the old world.
Yep.
And based on the location, there's different weather tables, different special rules, active and things like that, that are thematic to the area that they're playing in.
Cool.
And I ran the idea by the people who were playing in the league beforehand, because I was going to homebrew in for the duration of the league, not just one specific region. I was going to homebrew in something called a deception reroll.
Right.
And the idea behind that is that you could take 1, just a maximum of 1, and it had cost you twice the price of your team's rerolls. And you could use that once per game, not once each half, once per game, to force your opponent to re-roll their dice pool.
Ooh.
And although they all said,
isn't it shit enough as it is,
they all said that it were a really cool idea, but they felt like they'd be a little bit annoyed if they ended up losing because of it. But maybe I'll increase the cost to 1.5 times the cost of a team's reroll. But I thought it were a really cool idea to be able to force your opponent to reroll their dice.
God, there could be all sorts, couldn't there? You could make all sorts of weird and wonderful rules.
Oh,
and I think if
God,
you were
yeah.
in a competitive environment, I think people would get a little bit shitty about it. But if you're
yeah.
there for shits and giggles with your mates, then I suppose you can make whatever rules up you want, can't you?
Oh, yeah, I did a thing one Christmas where we did a Christmas-themed Blood Bowl game, and I pre-chose random squares on the board, and if you landed in one of them, you had to flip a coin, and if it was tails, you got a nice present. If it were heads, you got a nasty present. So it could be, and it were from a random list, like it could be you lose a reroll, or that player is immediately KO'd, or if it were nice, it could be things like that player gains a skill for rested game, things like that. And it were really fun, to be fair.
Yeah, fantastic.
But
so
anyway,
we've got all of our free movements. We've got some of our less risky things. We've talked about, is the ball safe, for them or for you, and where you're going to blitz. What's left for us to do now? Because we're starting to get into the bit where we're going to have to start rolling dice here.
Definitely.
We're looking at turnovers.
And for me, this is probably the point where, and this is not necessarily going to be the case every turn, but this is the point that if there's one available, this is where what we'll call the big play comes in. And this is where you might have spotted an opportunity that requires a little bit of luck, quite a lot of dice rolling. And this is the point where you think, right, I'm going to go for it. And that can apply whether you're playing as, whether your opponent's got the ball or whether you've got the ball. This is where, let's just think of an example. Your opponent's dropped the ball in their half of the pitch. It's marked by 2 players. You can run a player in to pick it up on a -2 modifier, dodge out, run down the pitch, hand off to one of your players, and then get within 2 squares of scoring, have to do 2 rushes to score. Basically one long sequence of play that involves multiple players and multiple different dice rolls for various different actions.
But the return is stupidly high.
It is, and it's not even necessarily just the return in the sense that you score, because scoring's always good no matter when you do it. But when you manage to pull something like that off, that's when the reward is the enjoyment in Blood Bowl. And even for your opponent, the amount of times like I've pulled off something that seems not impossible but improbable, and even my opponent's been like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you pulled that off. That's brilliant!" Like that's when Blood Bowl is at its best for me.
Nice, yeah. When you pull something off,
not only
people
that,
talk about it. When you listen to people talking about their games, that bloody bastard I played, he pulled this off. He was there and he did this and he did that and he did that. And I can't believe, he needed a 3+4+4+3+. Bloody pulled it off, didn't he?
Yeah. That's like you say, they're the bits that people remember, whether it's them doing it or having it done against them. It's them moments that genuinely, like, they are what makes Blood Bowl, aren't they? Mm. It's the typical example of, it's the last turn at game. You're currently drawing. You need to do 1 rush to score for the winner, and you roll a 1, and you've no rerolls left. Game over. Like that's it's happened to us all.
So I stood up at the end of my game 2 in Wareham at this tournament I was at the weekend. It wasn't, what day are we on? It was this weekend, wasn't it? It was this weekend just gone.
Yeah, last Saturday you went, didn't you?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I stood up at the end of the second game against Skaven. I think I must have made a few stupid dice rolls and made a few mistakes. And I stood up and all I was saying was stupid game. Stupid game. Stupid. And I wandered round for about 10 minutes. And every time I met somebody, they sort of smile and nod at you. Oh, all right, mate. Yeah. Stupid game. And they just laughed. And everyone was like, yeah, here we go. Somebody's had a few rolls that have not worked out. But yeah, and that's how you feel sometimes. A bloody why do I bother? Stupid game. I tell you what we've forgotten is some of those less risky skills checks, like bonehead and animal savagery and those sort of things. Where do they sit in with if you've got a man down, a troll down. Do you stand him up first, or do you stand him up second, or have you got to decide whether you want to, blitz with him and
Well, see,
what's the situation there?
This is a strange one because it, especially with big guys, and this is coming from me as a Wood Elf player who regularly takes a tree wherever I can afford it. The tree for me, 9 times out of 10, acts solely as a roadblock. He gets plonked in the middle of the pitch. His only movement 2, so it very rarely deviates from, the centre part of the pitch. He's purely a roadblock so that people feel like they have to go around him because he's so strong, so that I've got less of an area to have to cover with everybody else. There are other teams out there who, well, not even other teams, but other players who might even use a tree man more integral than I do to, whether it's blocking or whatever.
What's the skills on a tree man? I have never come across a tree man yet.
So a tree man, in fact, I tell you what, for the sake of me getting it wrong, off the top of my head, I'll quickly open BB roster, and we'll have a quick look. Honestly, they're quite useless, to be honest with you. if we're being serious,
got, like a route, isn't it?
Yes,
they're rooted or something.
So
like that.
we'll talk. So first of all, we'll talk about the price. 120k.
Ooh, right, okay.
Which is
it's not awful.
It's not awful, but they can only move 2 squares, and before you perform strength 6.
So that's not. It's great.
It's a nice trade-off. Like that 6 strength in exchange for the 2 movement it's a worthwhile trade-off. But before they can make those 2 moves, as you just mentioned, they've got a skill or a trait, called Take Root. They have to roll a d6. If they roll a 1, they are locked in place. They don't lose the tackle zone, and they can still block people so long as they are within reach of them, but they cannot move. If I remember rightly, and this could be wrong, so feel free to correct me by dropping a comment. The only time they are unrooted is if you have to reset up for another drive and, they're removed from the pitch and reset out, or if they get powed and knocked over, that rips their roots out of the ground.
Right, okay.
They've got Loner 4+, so, slightly risky to be used in your rerolls with. Mighty Blow +1. Stand Firm, Strong Arm, which is irrelevant when it comes to Wood Elves because you can't be throwing anybody. Thick Skull and Throw Teammate, which is also irrelevant. So yeah, for me, like I said, mate, I use them as just a big dirty roadblock right in the middle. Nobody wants to go near him because they don't want to have to pile in enough people to get enough assists to match that strength 6. So he stands at middle, and then everybody else on my team can control the either side of him, essentially, like so those channels.
If he's rooted, does he lose his tackle zones?
No, he doesn't lose his tackle zone.
That's nice as well, isn't it? That's nice.
See, as I said, in relation to risk management, like you said, if you've got a big guy who's down, do you stand him up? It really that is genuinely down to an individual play style. If you are, for me, with the teams that I play, the big guys are not as integral for me. I only use them a certain way, as I've just explained with Wood Elves.
Yeah.
But if you're the type of guy who's playing, I don't know, Imperial Nobility or even Underworld Denizens with your Troll, where you have them roaming around and smashing people to pieces, that's going to affect your judgment on what the risk management of, if you've got one of those players. That for me, it's a no-brainer. I'm not moving that tree man anywhere. He's only movement 2. He's going to stay around its centre. I'm going to stand him up. But the thing is as well, Gary, because he's movement 2 and standing up costs 3 movement, you've actually got to roll a go for it to see if he can stand up.
That's bonkers, isn't it? That is absolutely bonkers.
So yeah, in terms of big guys and people with these nega traits such as bonehead, very stupid and all that, it's down to each individual and how you use your big guy. If your big guy is going to be as a roamer who's smashing people to bits, there's a chance you might want to use your blitz action with him, and obviously you've got to then deal with if you roll a bonehead roll on an ogre. After you've declared a blitz action, you're going to lose that blitz action. You've got all them sort of things to consider as well when you're going through this thought process of risk management.
Yeah, skills plays into this quite a lot, doesn't it, when you're talking about risk management? Because you've got some some strange rosters where, like for Corn, for example, you've got players there that you get an extra strength if you blitz.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of things to think about, and I don't
I'll
really
tell
think
you,
I'll cover all of it, are we?
I'll tell you another thing, Gary. One thing you've just reminded me of, if we're talking about risk management as it relates to skills, a Corn team, they've got a shit ton of frenzy on their team.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like that's got to be one of the areas in all of Blood Bowl where you've got to be extra careful with blocks and blitzers when you've got frenzy, because you've got to anticipate what the assists are going to look like on that second block that you have to do. Obviously, with frenzy, it's not an option. If you don't knock them down with the first attempt, you've got to follow up and you've got to hit them again, even if you've pushed them into three of their own players, and it's going to
Even
be
if you're now two dice uphill, yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that's a massive area of risk management, and that's an example again where you've got to kind of be playing a couple of moves in front, because when you commit to that block action, you've got to think, right, if I don't knock him down here, where am I going to push him to? If I push him here, does he get any assists? If I push him here, does he get any? And then you've got to determine which is the best square to push him into. So yeah, that's
what I mean about it being the gift that keeps giving, right? You can play, an orc team or a human team, on some of the, the basic teams like lizards and what have you. But there are a whole bunch of teams that like vampires. I played vampires for my third game the other day. Oh my God, I don't think I'd want to play vampires. They've got so many rules.
Honestly,
so many rules.
Gary, that bloodlust, I can't tell you how many times I've read the excerpt from their Spike magazine journal, whatever thing it is.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've read the bloodlust section, and I'm still no closer to fully understanding it. It's just, I honestly, and I'm going to blame Games Workshop a little bit here, and maybe it is just me being a bit thick, but I don't think it's worded very well. It's sort of like
the times I've played Vamps twice now. Played them at Bugman's in my third game, and I played them at this last tournament in my third game. And both times the people playing them weren't fully, they weren't an expert at their rules. So I think my advice to everybody is pick your team, learn it, and don't go too complicated in your team choices until you're really, really nailed 3 or 4, really, really, nice, easy teams to play. I've avoided the Edge teams so far. Skaven is about as far as I've gone.
Well, can I ask why that is? What is it about Edge teams that you're a little bit apprehensive about?
Ooh, good question. I don't think I am. I think what's happened is I landed on orcs to start off with.
Mm-hmm.
I have always had orcs painted up. I bought lizards as a second team, and then I bought Skaven as a third team.
Yeah.
And whenever I've played Skaven, I've really, really, really struggled in the first few games.
Yeah.
So I think getting my head round that part of the more dashier part, when it comes off for Skaven, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. And I think the thing that I like, so what I've got to do is I think I've got to play humans. I've got a human team, they're unpainted. I think a reason why I've got to do that is because I think with the fast teams, you get to have more of a passing game. Not that you ever have a solid passing game in Blood Bowl with any team, but I think in those teams you absolutely have another dimension of a passing game.
Yeah.
You don't have that in orcs. You don't have that in lizards. Like lizards, they can't pick the ball up for sauruses. What a waste of time they are. They just keep the ball away from them. If it bounces on them and they manage to catch it, brilliant. Don't let it go.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think I've got a reason. I've just avoided them for the minute because I think it's a whole different play style that I just haven't explored yet.
The reason that I asked you is because my first team after the starter box, with Nobility and Black Orcs.
Yeah.
My first team after that was Necromantic Horror, which I've got some decent armor in there, and I played quite a lot of games with them for a long, long time before I picked up Wood Elves. And I had similar feelings to you, like I were almost nervous to play an agility team. And for me, I was constantly, not terrified, obviously, but in relation to Blood Bowl and playing Blood Bowl, I was constantly terrified by the idea of having an entire team whose armor is 8+. Like I was constantly worried that, oh my god, towards half time, this is going to be me playing with 5 players off a pitch against a full team, and that was something that was quite daunting to me.
Yeah.
And that is why I found picking up agility teams quite difficult. And it weren't until I got into the habit of realizing, like, I can't remember who it was. I think it was just a guy in one at local shops one time who just said, when you're playing a team who's got low armor against a team who can expose low armor and do a lot of damage, he said, only ever have somebody in base contact when you absolutely need to. He says, because he says, in theory, as a Wood Elf team, you've got really good agility, so you can dodge everybody away from your opponent's players and have nobody in base contact, and then the next turn, only one of your players is going to get hit because they've got to use the blitz action for it.
Yeah.
He says, so use that as a baseline and then only put people in base contact if you feel like you've absolutely got to stop somebody in the tracks. Because obviously you don't want to leave nobody in base contact, because then that just gives your opponent free reign to move wherever they want. But that were a really good way that I had it described to me for me to think, right, okay, I get it. If I make sure that I've only got my Wood Elves in base contact with an opposing player where I absolutely feel like I have to, then I'm cutting down on the amount of people who can actually get hit next turn, which then ultimately ended up bringing the amount of players that I had taken out down dramatically, which made me feel a lot more at ease playing agility teams.
And there's things you can do, isn't there? With I play with Skaven. This game at the weekend, I took a Bloodvisor keg.
Yeah.
Which just gives you, just a +1 to your KO recovery at the end of a turn, which is really, really useful. It just gives you an extra 6th chance to bring somebody back on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. They're really useful, and Bloodwisers, they're always one of those inducements that I always regret not taking when I had the opportunity to, because it's guaranteed the game that I don't take them when I can, I roll nothing but ones to bring KO'd players back, which a Bloodwiser keg probably wouldn't have helped with. But psychologically, in my head, I'm thinking, there's no way I would have rolled a 1 if I had a Bloodwiser keg.
Well, 3 of them would have helped.
Well, yeah.
I think you can only take 2, can't you?
Yeah, 1 always fails, doesn't it? So you can get it down to it being a 2+ to bring them back.
Yeah. Right, okay, that'll be why then. That makes sense. So we've talked about all of these cheap moves and the free moves. And then next thing is going to be, 1 dice blocks, 2 dice blocks, how do skills fit into all of that? And also the thing we were just talking about then is, if you've got people that are based, and you've got good edge, what order do you do in? Do you want to be taking those 2 dice blocks, or do you want to be dodging out, and risking not getting those blocks?
See, again, this is a tricky one, because I think this comes down to each individual. For me, I am perfectly comfortable taking 2 dice blocks wherever I can over dodging away. The only time where I'm thinking to myself, right, I'm probably going to dodge this guy away, is if it's a 1 dice block, and what could potentially happen is, next turn, I hand over to my opponent, they move somebody in to assist, and then make it a 2 dice block against myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, blocks and assists are a really weird area to talk about risk management, because, as you just said, skills are such a massive influence on how comfortable you are taking us. For example, if you've got a 1 dice block, but you've got block and dodge, you've got a blodger, you think, oh fuck it, 1 dice block's nothing. But if it's just a straight up 1 dice block with no skills, that's suddenly more risky, isn't it?
Yeah, very risky. Yeah,
and there's far too many skills that affect block actions for us to cover them all.
No, exactly. Whenever I'm playing people who are playing dodgy teams, they do tend to do their blocks as their last thing. And I suspect that's probably because I'm playing bashy teams who are in the habit of, basing things for 1 and 2 dice blocks.
Yeah.
they're probably saying, you know what, I'm going to get all my actions done that I need to get done, and then I want to just reduce the amount of blocks he's going to have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take them in order, and my less risky ones and my most useful ones, do them first, and I'm just going to keep on dodging out of the way until I fail and turn over, or until I get them all done.
Do you know what? That you've literally just described the exact way that I would probably approach that. If I'd done everything that I wanted to do and I had nothing but a series of blocks left to do, I'm going to get the 2 dice ones due to some assists out of the way. Probably as Wood Elf start with my tree man, because he's getting 2 dice or even 3 dice against some players a lot of the time. So start with him. And then you move on to your 2 dice blocks, that you get from assists by other players. And then I'd approach 1 dice blocks. And probably at the beginning of that process, admit to myself that, right, these ones I'm quite comfortable with, that they're going to be all right. Once I get to these 1 dice blocks, I'm just literally going to work my way across the line until I'm either really lucky and I get through everything without anything happening, or there's a turnover.
So obviously your 1 dice block with your War Dancer. Scott is, he's a blodge, so he's got his block, he's got his dodge, really, really much higher percentage, of being successful. But even on your lineman with no skills, you would take a 1 dice a 1 dice block over dodging away, maybe one of your, I suppose, your catchers, say.
Well, see now that again, another variable to consider is this depends totally on what team I'm playing against.
It's the gift that keeps giving. I keep telling you, it's the gift that keeps giving.
See, now that lineman you mentioned, would I be more comfortable doing a 1 dice block than dodging him away? If I'm lined up against a lineman with similar strength, let's just say a human lineman, yeah, I'm going to take it. Absolutely. Why not? I'm getting towards the end of my turn. In a couple of activations, I'll be handing over anyway. Because I've already said, at this point, I've already admitted to myself that I'm happy with where everybody else is on the pitch. I've kind of already prepared for that part to potentially go wrong. The only area that I can't control after that is if my lineman does get knocked on his ass, is the armor roll and the injury roll. That's the only bit that, is risky to me, because I've got confidence in myself that everybody else on the pitch is where I want them to be, just to make it so that if something goes wrong here, it's not going to make it too easy for my opponent. But I do run the risk of this player getting injured and being off the pitch and then suffering in terms of numbers for subsequent turns. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it? It's really
crazy. And do you know what? There's probably people going to listen to this and think, what a load of old shit. About? Yeah, what a load of old shit.
And the thing is I think, right, and I don't know if I'm right, and again, I've said I'm only a year into this little journey I'm on, right? But I think that as well as table time, getting out, playing teams, playing teams you don't play as well. So I'll go on to that in a minute about the Barnstable thing that I do. I think talking about Blood Bowl, because I remember turning up at that Full Beard Cup in whenever it was it October or back along, and I remember turning up to that and just listening to everybody talking, and I was like, "You're talking a different language. What the fuck are you all talking about?" I got no idea. You're talking about what's a blodge, right? And people that are new into all of this, right? It is a language of its own, and it's only when you start playing and you start talking with other people that you actually start to get a little bit of a sense that I can actually understand some of this.
Yeah,
it never goes away where you don't understand all of it. There are some people that talk about this stuff, and I just listen to it and think, "Oh my god, there's so much more to learn."
No, it is crazy, and honestly, I think that talking to other people is, I'm not going to say it's more beneficial to learning Blood Bowl than actually playing it, but I think it's as beneficial.
I think so, yeah.
Because the amount of half of the habits that I have now is from talking to somebody who says, "Oh, when I play that team, I take 2 of these instead of 2 of these, or I drop this," as we mentioned earlier, where you compare rosters with people and so what are you taking? Sometimes somebody will tell you, oh, I've built this roster and I've took this because this, and you think, wow, that's really good logic. I'm going to try it the next time. Before you know it, that's a habit that you then take on and do
Yeah.
yourself regularly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I love all the roster stuff. That's when
Oh,
I geek out. I tell you what I liken it to, which was a big thing for me. You know, when you're doing RPGs online on computers,
yeah.
and you've gone round and you've been to 100 different blooming tasks that you've done, and you've got this rucksack full of shit,
Yeah.
right? And you're moving it all around and you're putting it into chests, and that's what it feels like. It feels like you're proper geeking out on, oh, if I could just do that. Oh no, that's going to be $5,000 over. I'll tell you what, if I do that and I change that and I do this, that'll work. Oh, but what if I wanted to do that?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. Like that sort of, it's, for me, the best way to describe it is, it's like, it's Blood Bowl theory, isn't it? It's theorizing.
I've never looked at
And
Wood Elf's rosters, and I've got it in front of me on BB Roster.
yeah.
And there are other websites. Obviously, we're not sponsored by BB Roster and all that sort of bollocks. But it's the first time I've looked at them, and I'm like, oh, I quite like the look of Wood Elves.
They're so fun. They're so much fun. And they're not just fun because they're a good performing team. They allow for such satisfying moments. Like I think I've told story before to you, whether it's privately or on podcast, that I have before, from the use of a pass and a handoff, gone from my opponent being 2 squares away from scoring in my own end zone when he dropped the ball to me scoring in a single turn just with some passing and some cheeky handoffs. And it's just, again, it's those where you pull those big moments off that just bring
I love it
so much satisfaction. And Wood Elves, especially if you're eager to give passing a go, because I think that for me personally, until High Elves come, Wood Elves are the best passing game. There's a couple of teams just as good, but for me personally, I've not had as much success passing with any others as I have Wood Elves. So if you're eager or debating giving passing a go, I would definitely look into them, mate. They're so much fun. They allow for so much satisfaction with passing game, 100%.
Cool. Well, you might have converted me. Mate, I tell you what as well, we were talking about our playing the game and talking to others. Talking to others is almost as important, if not the same. If only there was a group of people, right, that listeners could get in touch with and join a WhatsApp group, eh?
Yeah, if only. So I tell you what, because we're going to do a little section on. I think me and you are quite aligned on this next section. We're going to talk about the numerical, tangible percentages of rolling certain results on certain guys.
Yeah.
Now,
why do you say I'm aligned? What do you think I might be bringing to this?
No. What I
is
mean
it because of the job that I do? Do you think?
What I mean is, despite it being very definitive, these percentages, I couldn't really give a toss about what the percentages are. Whereas there are other players who will literally know what the percentage chance of rolling a 4+ on a D6 is at any given time, and they'll use that to determine whether they're going to commit to that action or not.
Yeah,
and
you
that's
don't
fine.
Absolutely need to know these, right, to be able to play Blood Bowl. But what it does is it gives you an extra tool in your toolbox to be able to go, ooh, and it makes you stop and think, you know what, I really want to do this move. Wait a second, I've got a 1 in 36 chance of it happening. Do I really want to do it?
Yeah. In fact, I'll tell you what, instead of talking about the plug-in the Nomads, we'll get through this section of percentages and we'll have a little chat about Nomads after. So, just before anybody says anything, I'm going to plug the article that I'm using so that if any of this information is wrong, they can blame them and not me.
Absolutely, mate. Well done.
So
it's not my fault. It's somebody else's.
So,
unless we read the numbers wrong,
yeah. Unless it is literally us at fault. So, Goonhammer.com, quite a popular website. They cover a lot of games, not just Blood Bowl. They did an article a couple of years back, not long after Blood Bowl 2020 edition launch, called Hammer of Math Risk Management in Blood Bowl. And they've basically broken down all the different percentage chances of rolling certain results on the different actions within Blood Bowl. Like I've just said, I'm not a percentage guy. I will never, ever know the percentage chance of rolling a specific result on certain dice at any given time and use that to influence my decision. However, I figured if we just discussed some of them a little bit, people might be able to use that as a rough gauge and
Really important to
allow
some
themselves
people,
to realize, like, well, that's it. Some people might use this as gospel and say, right, if it's below a 40% chance of success, there's no way I'm doing it. And that's fine. If people want to play like that and that's how people want to interact with game, absolutely. But if you're anything like me, and I assume like you, Gary, I would just use this as a gauge to give you a vague impression of whether an action is risky or not, and, like, you know, use your own interpretation and the situational, like, information of what's actually happening in front of you. So in this Goonhammer article, they cover agility and passing tests first. So basically this stuff that requires a D6 roll. So when you're doing a passing agility test, your chances of success, if the agility test is a 2+, is 83%.
Yep.
With a reroll, that jumps up to 97%, which I think 97% is a safe enough margin to say it's almost unfailable.
Yep. So if you've got dodge and your edge is 2+, and you got you got a reroll because of your dodge, then you've got a 97% chance of dodging away from somebody who's basing you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you get up to a 3+ agility test, your chances of succeeding that on a D6 without a reroll are 67%, and then that rockets up to 89% with a reroll. Still,
Huge,
for me, 89% is still, in my mind, although not literally, is like, right, that's practically unfailable. Let's go for it.
Mate, something we haven't talked about is we haven't talked about reward, right? And if you are in a position where you're based and you're thinking, I haven't got a reroll, and I've got 3+, and it's 67%, and you absolutely need to get away from that guy, right? Then regardless of whether it's 67% or even a 4+ and at 50%, you're going to be taking the dodge, aren't you? And you can probably leave it towards the back end of your team, and you're going to get out of there.
Exactly, and that's why I preface this entire section with, there are some people out there who will use these percentages as gospel, but it's important to take into account the situational side of it. Like, there are going to be times where the result, or the if you were successful, the appeal of succeeding that action massively outweighs any uncertainty around the percent chance of succeeding. Well, do you know what I mean? It's just, it's very situational, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, as well, is if you know these numbers, not that you need them to be able to play Blood Bowl, but if you do know these numbers and you're good with numbers, it helps you avoid things that you would do that would give you bias. So things like recency bias is a thing in data science. People get it into their heads. I've rolled double skulls 4 times. In 10 goes. I'm double skull heavy tonight, right?
Yeah.
No, it's just random, right? It is just random. Yeah. But the thing is you've got recency bias there, and if you know the chances and you've got really high chance of success, the fact that you got 4 double skulls in 10 basically means you've had really, really bad dice. But you've got an 11th roll now, and the chances are still the same. You've got
yeah, absolutely. It's just this all the psychological side to it, isn't it? That you're just like, you had your dice are rolling hot, they're rolling cold, and all that business. There's another podcast episode in itself there, isn't it?
Well, it's just dice for me. There is no good. And I think the sooner you get your head round that there's good luck and bad luck, and actually you're just there for shits and giggles. I think the better. So what's the other percentages then on these agility and passing then? Sorry, I keep on interrupting, mate. I do apologise.
No, absolutely fine, mate. So when you get to a 4+ agility test, that's where you get to, as you would imagine on a D6, that's where you get to your 50% chance without a reroll. And that jumps up to 75% chance with a reroll, which, still pretty appetizing. 50% chance.
So this is it. So it's not just agility; it's passing as well. So if you've got like pass, do you get a reroll for pass? Is it?
You do. If you fail a passing test and you've got the passing skill, you get to re-roll it without using a team
So
re-roll.
that's where you get your 75% if you've got a 4+ pass. Yeah, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So when you get to the 5+ and 6+, this is probably, I would imagine, for a lot of players, this is the area where they start to think, oh, maybe not. So a chance of a success on a D6 roll for an agility and a passing test that requires a 5+ is 33%. And it jumps up to 56 with a reroll. Now,
so you're saying basically that you're not going to dodge your tree man out for 33%.
Exactly. And weirdly, for me, as I'm not a percentage guy or a percentage player, whatever you want to call it, for me, the difference in how palatable it is between the chance of success and chance with a reroll, so 33% compared to 56, that's the biggest jump up of any of these we've spoken about so far. Going from 33% is nigh on, I'm never ever going to try it. But that reroll jumping up to
1 in 3 chance of success, yeah.
Exactly, but that jump up to 56 with a reroll would immediately make me think, oh yeah, that's definitely worth a try.
So you're saying You're going to be putting dodge on your tree man next time round? You get a skills.
Well, yeah, I'm going to have to because he's got a loan of 4+. And this is the one that if you're attempting this, you're an absolute maniac. If there is an agility or a passing test that requires a result of 6+, it says 6+, but it's just a 6, to succeed without a reroll, you've got a 17% chance of succeeding, and that only jumps up to 31% with a reroll, which surely we've got to agree here, Gary, that regardless of whether we're playing for shits and giggles or not, that's a no-go zone, isn't it?
It depends what you're doing, doesn't it?
Oh, Gary, come on.
Well, let's just say, right, if you're turn 16 and you've got no other options, right, but to dodge out and walk in a touchdown, you're gonna give it a go, aren't you? If you turn 1,
absolutely,
then maybe not.
Absolutely, and that again boils down to the risk versus reward, and then also leans slightly into the situational side of things as well, doesn't it?
So I think that completely poos on everything that we've talked about, that actually all of this is important, but you just got to suck it and see, and depending on your situation and play it and play about with it and have a go with it, research it, learn some of it.
Well, actually, Gary, when we finish this section, I don't know if you are aware, but I reached my tendrils out into the ether of the Blood Bowl community and asked for some examples, some stories that people have got of where they pulled off really unlikely things to succeed. And I was going to use these people's stories.
They pulled off.
And I was going to use those examples to literally sort of finish off the episode by saying, disregard everything we've said because here's some stories where people pulled some crazy shit off. But before that, let's move on to the percentage chances when it comes to moving. And when it says moving, it basically means just rushing. So for anybody that doesn't know, they are, mate, yeah. So for anybody that doesn't know, when your player has expended all its movement allowance, it has the option to rush for 2 squares or 3 squares if it's got this sprint skill. So if you attempt to rush 1 square with 0 rerolls, you've got an 83% chance of succeeding that one rush.
Basically. Yeah, you roll a d6, fail on a 1. Yeah. So it's 86% chance of success. Yeah.
83.
83, is it? Sorry, yeah, 83. My bad. Yep.
So if you fail that 83% chance and use a reroll, the reroll then bumps that up to a 97% chance of succeeding that rush, which is nigh on unfailable in it, really.
So where do you get the reroll? So you get a reroll from your rerolls, or you could have, is it Sure Feet?
Yeah, Sure Feet provides a free reroll on rushes.
Look at me knowing the skills.
That's worth mentioning. I could be wrong, and I'm happy for somebody to correct me. I'm not sure if Sure Feet is once per activation, so if you used it on your first rush, you couldn't use it on any subsequent ones.
Mate, I'm all over it. I'm looking now. I will come back to you.
Yeah, that's fine. No worries. I'll move on to the next one. So rush your 2 squares, 2 subsequent squares, should I say? You've got a 69% chance of passing them both using no rerolls, and that jumps up dramatically if you had to use one reroll of those 2 to 93%, and then if you used a reroll on both of them, it jumps up to 95%. So I think one thing that we're learning here is because the success for a rush is a 2+ universally in Blood Bowl, it's making it abundantly clear that the difference between failing and succeeding is a reroll, isn't it? Because both occasions now, it's jumped up to the high 90s with the use of a reroll. And then if you have got the sprint skill and you can rush the extra square to make it 3, you've got a 58% chance of passing all 3 of those without a reroll. It jumps up to 87% chance just using a reroll once in those 3 rolls.
87%, yeah.
87, and then if you had to use 2 rerolls of those 3 rushes, that's 92. And weirdly, if you had to use a reroll on every single one, it stays at 92. I think that might be an error on Goonhammer's side, because there's no way the use of an extra reroll keeps it at the same percentage as using 2, surely.
Well, we needed a maths expert, don't we, to come back and help us with that one, mate.
Yeah, if there's anybody listening who's part of Mensa, give us a shout, because that doesn't seem right.
Why does a sprint and 3 rerolls? To be fair, the reason why it's 92, I've just worked it out. You can't use 3 rerolls.
Oh, why not?
Is that right? Oh, well, no, you probably could, because you could use your Sure Feet, which is 1 per turn during their activation. Yeah. This player may re-roll a d6 when attempting to rush. And then I suppose you could use one of your re-rolls and then another one of your re-rolls, couldn't you?
Or if you've got 3 re-rolls, you wouldn't even need Sure Feet. You could just use 3 of your team re-rolls if you were that desperate to succeed.
Why is it 92% for 2 re-rolls and still only 92% success for 3 re-rolls?
I think that's an error. I think it's probably sitting more at like 95, 96%. Probably.
Yep. I'll do some maths on that, and we'll have a play around with it.
We'll revisit it.
I'll get my abacus out and me extra. I'll get my wife to come in and give me her fingers as well. I'll start counting.
So after that, we start to discuss scatter distribution, and this is going to be a really weird one to discuss on an audio-only podcast. But a couple of key areas that surprised me. Why?
You by yourself on this one. Scatter distribution, mate. I'm a data scientist. I haven't got a fucking clue what you're talking about. Scatter distribution.
So, no,
go on, give us a clue.
So do you know when the ball scatters and it moves 3 times in the direction of a D8?
Right. Okay. So where is it likely to add up then? Where to land?
Okay. So they've created a 7x7 grid, with the center square being the one that was targeted or where the ball landed. And then there's a percentage in every other square to show you what % chance it would have of landing in that square after 3 scatters.
Bonkers. I get it now.
The one that struck me the most is, so imagine, if you can use your mind's eye, the center of this square.
When does a ball scatter, just so that we know?
Oh God, yeah. You're putting me on spot
because
there, Gary.
Normally it just moves once, doesn't it?
So you've got 3 instances where ball moves as it shouldn't. So you've got the bounce, which is where it just goes 1d8 in direction from the center square. You've got the scatter, which is you roll the d8 3 times to determine, a random direction. Yeah, and then you've got the deviation, which is a D8 and a D6.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I got you. Cool.
So a scatter is a scatter on in an accurate pass, I think. As me. Well as
I'm the new one here.
That also applies to throw teammates as well, so you can actually have a goblin scatter.
Of course, yeah.
So on a scatter, the thing that I found really interesting, so imagine, again, in your mind's eye, if you will, the centre square is the one that the ball was targeted for. For
Yep.
it to scatter 3 times in the same direction, diagonally, it's a 0.2% chance.
My God, right, so
How
1 in
crazy
500.
is that? Yeah, so if you, for example, you're rolling on D8, sorry, and you roll 8, 8, and 8, and it ends up in the bottom right-hand corner of this imaginary grid we're talking about, that was a 0.2% chance.
Yeah, 1 in 512. Yeah,
that is crazy.
Okay.
And weirdly, the highest area on this scatter chart is actually the 8
highest
squares.
of the 7x7 boxes.
Yeah, the highest ones
Yeah,
are actually the 7 squares that surround the target square are sitting at 5.3% chance of landing in.
Yeah, the 8 squares surrounding that 5.3.
Sorry, yeah,
did
the
you
8,
say?
yeah, 5.3.
That's still a 1 in 20 chance, isn't it? So it really is. If you're gonna scatter, it really is completely random.
It's very random, and then you get to the next ring out from that, and you've got 1.2%, 2.3, 1.4, 0.6. Like, it's probably, to be fair, it's conceptualized it enough for me to be able to say that scattering is probably the fairest and most random aspect of Blood Bowl.
So,
God,
I'm just working this out, mate. So,
yeah,
when you've got scatter and it can go up to three squares in any direction, what we're saying
yeah,
is an almost 50% chance. It is a 43-1, 47-1, 47.1% chance that it will scatter to where it was meant to land or 1 square around it. It's almost 50% chance that it won't go 2 or 3 squares away from where it was intended.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's interesting. And it's actually got more chance of landing 1 square away from where it was than it has of landing on the actual square that it was intended to go to, because it's only a 4.7% chance.
Yeah.
That's bonkers.
It's crazy. And it almost feels that crazy that I kind of want to say that this can't be right, but it is.
Do you reckon everybody is turned off? Do you reckon people have been listening now up until this point, and we can actually give them a little like Easter egg, right? And anybody who's still listening, right, you definitely win a prize, because I've got the picture in front of me. I'm listening to Baz, and I'm confused.
Oh mate, I'm reading it and I'm fucking confused.
Scatter distribution. It's definitely an article that's worth reading, isn't it? I've googled it, and there's actually 2. So you're absolutely right. If you Google Goonhammer Blood Bowl risk management, you get the basics version. We're looking at the Hammer of Math risk management in Blood Bowl, the more advanced version.
Yeah. I mean, the scatter distribution section it were always going to be the hardest part to talk about on an audio-only podcast. And it's very clearly the one with the most variables. So let's move on. Let's move on from scattering.
Yeah. Let's move from scattering to something much more interesting: hitting people.
Yeah, blocking. And the way that they've done this, so the little table that they've got, it says underneath, the probability of at least 1 die resulting on the indicated outcome. So on a 1 dice block, you have got a 17% chance of rolling a player down, i.e. your player skull.
1 in 6 for all of them, yeah.
Oh, no,
and 2 in 6.
Hang on a minute.
2 in 6 for pushback. Yeah, that's right.
That's right, yeah, that's right. So on a 1 dice block, you've got a 17% chance of a player down, aka a skull. You've got a 17% chance of rolling a both down, a 33% chance of a pushback, and a 17% chance of defender stumbles, and a 17% chance of a pow. So that's pretty even. It's a nice symmetrical chance where your highest one being a pushback and then everything else being a 17. And then when you get
your block and your dodge is going to make a huge difference to that, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't even like to think that anybody, even at Goonhammer, has got the time to write out the percentage chances for all the different skills. But just if this were no skills, just one dice block, no skills on either player, those are your chances. And if you've got a 2 dice block in a similar scenario, it jumps up to a 31% chance for a skull and a both down. 56% chance for a pushback and a 31% chance for both stumble and pow as well.
Cool.
Which that almost makes 2 dice blocks a little bit less appealing, don't it? Really?
It does, but then we're taking them in your blocks of 31%, right? Because if you were going to do a 2 dice block and you were happy with a pushback and you were happy with a stumble and you were happy with a pow, then all of a sudden you've got a high likelihood of getting those.
That's a blodger's paradise, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when you move up to 3 dice blocks, which are a rarity for most people, you've got a 42% chance of rolling at least one player down, a 42% chance of both down, as well as 42% chance on stumble and pow, and the pushback rockets up to a 70% chance. I must admit, mate, these percentages are they're a lot different from what I expected. They actually make certain aspects look a lot riskier. But again, I think that because we've spoke about how heavily skills and traits affect the blocking actions, that these are obviously bare bones blocks. So they probably look way more risky than they actually would be in a real game, really, won't they?
Yeah, and I think as well, because we're looking at these in isolation, so we're just saying like 3 dice, 42% player down, right?
Yeah.
That's of one of the dice, the 42% chance of the dice giving you a 1 dice a player down. Now, you're probably not going to select the player down.
Nope.
So these are all in isolation of you getting 1 instance of these on your dice. So in real life, when you're playing these, what you're probably going to do is pick the better choice.
Yeah. I mean, if you can see slightly under that, they do actually outline rolling that exact amount of each result, which is even scarier. And what I'm going to do, instead of going through all these, because there's a shit ton of numbers, I'm just going to go straight to 3 dice blocks. On a 3 dice block, the chances of you rolling all 3 being a skull is 0.5% chance. Now, that pisses me off a little bit, Gary, because I feel like I've rolled plenty of triple skulls. And I'm tempted to call them out on the bullshit, because the amount I've rolled, there is no way it's a 0.5% chance.
Well, if you think about it, how many dice you roll, right? So even a 2 dice skull, right, is a 2.8 chance.
Yeah.
Right, of two skulls. Is that right?
Yeah,
that's right. I'm looking at it right, aren't I? So it's 2.8% chance of skulls. Now, a 3 dice, skulls, is a 1 in 216 chance. Now, if you think about it, how many times are you rolling dice? So in every 216 times that you roll 3 dice, right, you're going to roll triple skulls. And that just sucks when it happens. Because it does feel like it's more often, people talk about it, I suppose, a lot, don't they? God, I can't believe I rolled triple skulls.
I mean, equally, both down, defender stumbles, and the POW are also 0.5% chance of rolling all 3 in a 3 dice block. Yeah, and then really underwhelmingly, the pushback still only jumps up to a 3.7% chance of all 3 being a pushback on a 3 dice block.
Yeah, and I think these numbers fairly much are pretty irrelevant, because when you're rolling 3 dice, you're not looking for 3 of the same thing. You're looking for that variance, or you're looking for the good things.
Yeah.
So actually, the chances of you wanting to get 3 pushbacks at 3.7% is probably never going to happen.
I mean, well, let's talk about the best case scenario on a 3 dice block. If you're rolling a 3 dice block, you're looking for a POW, and that's sitting at a 34.7% chance of at least one of your dice being a POW on a 3 dice block. And that's what you're looking for in it, Gary, in a 3 dice block.
Yes.
So that is the appeal of a 3 dice block, because a 34% chance of rolling a power is fantastic, isn't it?
Over a third of the time. Yeah, just over a third of the time.
Exactly. So now we've knocked a few people over, we can move on to the chances of breaking armor and inflicting injuries, if you want, mate.
Cool. Is this the last table? Because I seriously think we're going to be losing the audience if we carry on with these numbers. You know? This is like me explaining to people this glazed look that I get from people when they say, "Oh, so Gary, what do you do for a job?" Well, I'm a data scientist, and some polite people say, "Oh, really? That sounds interesting. What does that? What do you have to do?" And you can tell. You can tell that people have glazed over.
Well, this is the last one, and I actually think it's quite. I think it's probably one of the more useful ones, really, personally.
Right, okay.
So armor and injury rolls are done on 2d6. This is not going to take into account anything to do with like Mighty Blow or Thick Skull or anything like that. This is just a raw armor and injury rolls. So on 2d6, your chances of rolling a 2+ are obviously 100%.
Yep.
But there's nothing with 2+ armor in Blood Bowl.
Unfortunately not.
Unfortunately, on a 3+ to succeed in breaking armor and injury, it's a 97%. Then 4+, 92%, 5+, 83%, 6+, 72%, and then 7. This is where it kind of becomes relevant, because there's a couple of players with 7+ armor. You've got a 58% chance of breaking armor, which is quite tasty, isn't it? When you think of some of those weaker players with lower armor, that's you fancy your chance of breaking armor there, don't you?
And then you get annoyed when you don't break it. You play a full game. It's like, I didn't bloody break armor once.
See, now this next one, this is the bit that might put you off playing.
This is the entry level to armor, isn't it?
Exactly. 8+. This is your wood elves. Quite a lot. There's more players with 8+ armor than I realise. I think the werewolves in necromantic horror, they're also skinks. 42% chance, which is, if you're playing as somebody who's got 8+ armor, it still would strike fear at the potential of your players getting minced, wouldn't it, really?
42%, yeah.
Yeah, then you get to your 9+. This is where you get into some of your stronger positionals at 28%. Then you've got your 10+, which is where I do believe, Gary, most of the orcs sit at.
Yeah, 17%.
That's 17%. And then your 11+, which the tree man's got, is an 8%. And 12+, I think, does Deeproot Strongbark, the tree man's star player, does he have 12+?
I don't know. I'm a newbie to all of this. I dream of 12+. But it's still 3%. There's a 3% chance of somebody breaking your armor.
So it's
but
not
I'll tell
impossible.
You what's interesting about it's not impossible, right, mate? And if I had that style player, I'm telling you, people would be breaking his armor, because I am the most unluckiest Blood Bowl player in the world, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely. That's it. Whenever somebody else uses him, you can never break the armor. But as soon as you use him, he gets his fucking armor broke every time.
Absolutely, mate. Have you seen how, right? And I know there'll be people on here that will know what the hell I'm talking about, and others that won't. But a normal distribution bell curve, right? How 7 is the most popular number you can roll with 2d6s, right? So hence the reason why in the middle, 58% chance of doing that, and then you get an 8+, it goes down to 42%, and then it feels like it drops off a bit of a cliff, really, because 9+ is 28%, 10+ is 17%, and that's just purely because you've got more chance of rolling those middle numbers. So an 8 is just as often going to happen as a 6, but a 9 and a 5 is going to happen less often than an 8, a 6, or a 7. And you are less. There's less numbers to go at. When you're at a 9 and a 10 and 11. So that normal distribution of rolling d6s and adding the results together, a 10 armor is pretty peachy, isn't it?
Oh god, it's fantastic.
17%.
It's absolutely fantastic. It just. I've played games where, do you know what? I've played games where even 9+ armor just feels unbreakable at times.
Yeah, 28%. So who have we got at 10s? We've got the orcs, we've got lizardmen, Dwarves. Everybody fucking hates playing dwarves, don't they?
Yeah. I think
I've
off the top of my head, I think the flesh golems from the necromantic horror, I think they're 10 plus.
yeah.
I think
Doom Kings.
the yeah, they'll have some 10 plus. There's the mummies from Shambling Undead. The Nurgle Rotters, the bloaters, sorry, from the Nurgle team. I
I
believe
got to play
they're
Nurgles
also
in
10.
my next Barnstable game.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, never
Interesting.
played them before. Yeah,
We've got the ogre blockers and runt punters there, 10 plus. So, to be fair, really, when you have a good think about it, there's a lot more 10 plus armor out there in Blood Bowl than you first realise, like, without having a good look.
I think every team, probably almost all teams, have got an option. Sorry, a majority of teams have got an option to have a 10 plus player.
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's,
would agree.
and this is what I find really interesting about Blood Bowl when you're talking about rosters and all of that earlier on. The dynamics of different team makeups, the dashy teams and the bashy teams, and just all of those different combinations that you can have. I just find it really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's very fun to talk about, isn't it?
So we've done the stats bit now, mate.
We have.
Do we think people are tuning back in again now?
We've finished boring people to death, and now it's time to say. It's time to say
we should
that
really wrap that up. We should wrap up. What is risk management? Right. So it's about when it's not your turn, having a really good look at where all your options are.
Yep.
It's when it is your turn, remembering, is the ball safe? Where am I going to blitz? Where are my easy moves? Where are my more risky moves? And trying to put them in order and do them in some sort of, less risky first, more risky at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Accepting that you are probably going to turn over more often than you're not, and it's very rare that you will get to the end of all of those moves and succeed at all of them.
Yeah.
So just suck it up, and I suppose just have some fun as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the aspect of fun is just a given. So I never feel like I never say it because I love Blood Bowl so much and I enjoy playing it so much that I just always have fun. But there are different people out there who maybe only ever have fun when the dice are rolling hot, or when they're winning. So yeah, if you are one of them people, just accept that. You can do all the risk management in the world, but ultimately you're at the mercy of the dice. So just try to have fun
100%.
no matter what. Which brings me on to, like, despite everything we've discussed, this has been a waste of an hour and a half, Gary, because as we know, despite everything we've spoken about, sometimes the dice will just be on your side, and sometimes they will not be on your side, no matter how good you are at risk management, no matter how safe you play, or no matter how risky you play, it'll either go your way or it won't. And I've got a couple of stories to share. So because I knew we were going to be discussing risk management, I reached out on a couple of different Blood Bowl communities and explained that I was going to be doing a podcast episode on risk management. And I wanted some people to share some stories where they've pulled off some really big plays. Yeah, I finished that sentence, Gary, don't worry. Where they pulled off some really big plays, or I think there were even some instances where people talked about massive fails when they've tried big plays, and some of them were fun to read. So I'll read you a couple of these, just maybe 3 or 4 of them. So first one is from a gentleman whose username is nice_shitpost_op. And he said, so this is his story. He says, it's towards the end of the season, and I have a noble blitzer with diving catch, leap, dodge, pro, and 2+ agility. Jesus, nice. That's a massively upgraded player.
Yeah.
I have 1 reroll left. It's currently 1-1, and this is the last turn. The ball is next to my thrower as he dropped it last turn. This is how the chain of events went. I activate the thrower, declare a pass, pick up the ball, fail, show hands reroll, succeed, throw a short pass, wildly inaccurate, get a free reroll with pass, it turns it into inaccurate, ball lands next to the blitzer, catches it with diving catch, declares a blitz, dodge 2+, dodge 3+, reroll with dodge, block, push, 4+ dodge, reroll with my last reroll, leap failed, pro reroll passed, rushed the final step to get it in for a touchdown, rolled a 1, armor break, casualty, -1 strength, retired him.
No.
Thus ended the career of Emmerich Tacklebox III, noble blitzer of the Puffin Punches.
And that right there, people, is Blood Bowl.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The highs and the lows, right? It's like, oh, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, I'm in. Oh, I'm not.
Peaks and troughs. So
Yeah.
we got another one here from a guy called Kupo160, who were running vampires and says, so I run vampires pretty much every game I've played and end up attempting a ludicrous chain of rolls. My example from a game I played earlier today, so quite a recent one. I'm playing against Black Orcs. The ball is in my half of the pitch in an orc cage. I've got a catcher waiting in range of the end zone, marked, so she'll have to dodge twice to score. My thrower is marked similarly, but the only path that lets him both get the ball and get into range for a throw that isn't a bomb and has him open requires 4 dodgers and 2 go for it's. My blitzer hypno gazes the ball loose on a 4+. After dodging in on a 3+, thrower does a 4+ dodge and his second 4+, and then a 3+ using a reroll. Then finally a 2+ dodge and a 5+ pickup. Wow. Then a 2+ dodge away. Then
He's succeeded all of these with 1 reroll so far.
Yeah. Then a 2+ dodge away. Then a go for it. Then his second go for it. Then a 4+ pass. Then my catcher makes a 4+ catch, which she also fails, but I use a pro reroll on a 3+, and she gets her 4+. Then she makes her 3+ dodge. Then she fails her 2+, but has dodge, so we reroll and finally make it. Well, I'm gonna kind of piss on Kupo's bonfire here because he's made a rule mistake there, Gary.
I don't know. I didn't spot it.
It's the part where it says, but we make the 3+ dodge using the pro reroll. Pro can't be used for catches because it has to be during the player's activation that has the pro skill.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, so
you know more than me.
When you're rolling to catch, that player doesn't become activated.
Right.
It's sort of like a passive test, catch test. Pro can only be used in that player's activation. So at that point, to catch the ball, that player wasn't activated. So therefore,
mate, that was a really, really good story, and you've just pissed all over his bonfire.
Listen, we'll let it lie just for the theatrics.
God, I can't believe it.
And I've got one more here, and this is from the perspective of somebody regarding stalling, which might be of interest to you, Gary. My favourite might be one where my opponent stall. Oh, sorry, this is from his name's Hon Chen. My favourite might be one where my opponent stalled 2 tiles away from my touchdown line against my Skaven. My team is pretty worn down, lots of KOs, and my units are very scattered. My safety managed to dodge into a haphazard cage, stay afoot, and clear the ball, which bounces further towards my touchdown zone. My gutter runner manages to pick up the ball in 2 tackle zones, dodges out, hands the ball off with 2 go-for-its to my thrower. 1 lineman had been entangled in the enemy half. He had been completely surrounded with the goal to brutally murder him. To bail him out of my rat ogre has to dodge out of a tackle zone and blitz. Oh my God, he's dodging out of a tackle zone with a rat ogre. Wow.
Play to him.
Dodge out of tackle zones and blitz one of the enemy. Pushes twice so I can chain push my lineman out of danger. He succeeds, and the lineman dodges out of the tackle zone and runs for the TD zone with 2 go for it. The thrower then makes the pass, and he succeeds, thus scoring a touchdown to score.
Mate, they'll be singing songs about that team forever. They will be writing songs.
The dodge away for a blitz with a rat ogre is very heroic.
Mate, all of it is just, and when that sort of stuff comes off, right, that is the sort of stuff that you tell your children about, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Songs and tales of legend. So I did have a couple of more, but they were my 3 favourite ones. So we'll leave it there.
What do you reckon they were doing when it comes to risk management then?
Oh, they were pissing it into wind, mate.
Yeah.
Which is what it's all about. Sometimes you do just want to throw caution to the wind and think, nah, we're going to have some fun here.
Mate, if you're on turn 16 and you've got to just find a way of scoring, it's not about risk management. It's right. How is it even possible?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And I just thought it were a good idea to show that despite everything we've spoke about, sometimes there is going to be instances where you genuinely do just put all that to one side and say, right, we're going to have a go at this. And some of them stories are just perfect examples. So I think, mate, we've covered pretty much everything that we wanted to cover specific to risk management, unless there's anything else you can think of that you want to gloss back over.
I can't think of anything, mate.
So now it's time for a shameless little plug, isn't it, Gary?
Well, why not?
So, not long after I went to Bugman's Belter and met Gary, as well as Steve in person for the first time, I started a WhatsApp group chat because WhatsApp have got this community feature that were totally new to me, but apparently it's been around for a while. We've started a group on there called Nuffles Nomads Society. And the idea behind it is we're going to fill this group, this community, full of Blood Bowl players from up and down the UK of all different experience levels from all different areas. For example, I'm from Yorkshire. Gary's way down there in the southwest. In fact, there's quite a few of you guys from the southwest down there. Are they all your friends you've invited, Gary?
I don't know what you're on about.
So anyway, the idea is that
I don't have any friends.
For a lot of people, attending tournaments can be quite daunting.
Yes.
The idea of attending a tournament, especially alone, for a lot of people can be a bit of a roadblock. It can literally be a reason not to attend a tournament. Would you agree, Gary?
Yes, 100%.
So the idea behind the Nomads is to build a big enough of a community spread out across enough areas in the UK so that at any given time, an individual can post in there and say, there is this tournament at this place on this date. I want to go.
Who's going?
Yeah, I want to go. If they're comfortable saying, I'm a little bit nervous about going on my own, does anybody want to come? And hopefully, fingers crossed, the vision is that in however many months' time or a year's time, that a person posting something like that in there will have replies from a couple of people saying, yep, no problem, I've booked the day off work or whatever, I'm buying my ticket, I'll meet you there. And hopefully we can alleviate some of those nerves that people will experience when it comes to going to tournaments for Blood Bowl. I'm sure it's the same for any game, but obviously we're all into Blood Bowl, aren't we, Gary? Any of the games, it's pale in comparison, isn't it?
Well, I think just that hurdle of that first, second, maybe even third tournament, you don't, you don't really know anybody who's going. If you are part of a local club and somebody's going to a tournament and you've got somebody to go along to, then brilliant. Just come along and join in the WhatsApp group anyway. But if you are somebody that hasn't got that group, or you are part of a local group and you want to meet like-minded idiots like us, then come along and we chew the fat about Blood Bowl. We ask lots of questions about skills. Some people say, what's that skill do again? And it's just like a safe place to ask stupid questions in.
Yeah.
And talk about tournaments that are going on locally to you.
Yeah, I mean, not only that as well, Gary. I mean, even if you're not, like, I personally, I would have no problem turning up to a tournament on my own. I've done it before, but I can still benefit from this group because not only do I get to go to a tournament and play in a tournament, but now there's friends I've made from around UK who are travelling maybe just as far, if not further than me, like yourself, where we can coordinate to stay in the same hotel and go out for a meal or sit in each other's rooms and chat shit, like, about the next day.
We could maybe have a soft drink together.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, it. Although I don't need the Nomads to make me feel comfortable to go to a tournament, it can also, for players like me who aren't bothered about being there on their own, it adds that extra social element and, like, camaraderie. Look at us, we're all going together. It's going to be great to meet up with this person from that part of the country and that person from this part of the country and all that. And I just think it's such a fantastic idea. And I'm not even just because it were my idea, but I just think it's so needed.
Yeah,
because
and it doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be ours. Obviously, come and join ours anyway. But just get yourself into a WhatsApp group or a
Yeah,
Discord group, or get yourself some like-minded people, chew the fat, learn some stuff, and if you get the chance to meet in person, just take the risk, get out there and play some games. There's some brilliant people out in the community, absolutely
yeah.
brilliant.
Which is a good time to mention that we are currently keeping his eye out for dates for the Full Beard Cup at
Yep,
Warhammer World. I do believe it was the last weekend of October last year, wasn't it, Gary?
it was.
Which means to me that if it's going to be the same time, the last weekend of October, we won't get dates on the Warhammer World website until August, September.
I reckon probably July, August. Yeah.
Yeah, probably more close to that. So we're keeping us out for that. It's a 2-day tournament, so a full weekend of it. So there'll be a couple of us booking a hotel for the Friday and Saturday night. And I, for one, I'm looking very forward to it. The fact that it's a 2-day means that we've got a night in between where we can nip into town and have a meal or get a couple of drinks. Just again, the social aspect of it. And although, like I say, we're not necessarily players who scared to go to tournaments on his own, but we can look forward to it for different reasons, as well as the newer guys who will be made more comfortable by the social aspect to go to more tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit daunting going to tournaments. There's a lot of people who know each other. They've been doing this for years, and they go along. And I think people can possibly mistake it for a bit of clickiness. I don't think the Blood Bowl players are too clicky. I think
I
if you
agree.
just get out there and you just meet people and you tell people that you're new, and if you're sitting at a table opposite somebody, generally most people are super helpful. They'll point you in the right direction. Yeah.
So let's just quickly give a quick shout out to some of the people who have already joined Nomads, apart from myself and you, Gary. We've got Rory, Steve, Damon, David, Matt, Mike, Sean, Seb, another Steve, and Tim. A massive thank you to you guys for joining Nomads and being what I would consider founding members. There's plenty of them guys in there already. I'm really looking forward to meeting, and fingers crossed, even if it's not the Full Beard Cup, there's at least going to be a good chunk of us meeting up at some point in the near or at least seeable future.
Yeah.
And then finally for Nomads, where can they find us? So best way to do it is if you go to my TikTok page at Blood Bowl Baz, all one word, lowercase, and click the link tree link in my bio. It's the top option on there. It'll give you an invite code to us WhatsApp community where you'll request to join, and I just click, yep, you can join, and you're in. And it'll be probably flooded with messages of us arguing about whether releasing gnomes was a good idea or not, won't we, Gary?
Mate, I wasn't going to talk about this, right? But Baz had you had a bit of a meltdown, didn't you? You were initially quite disgusted, and I think once you'd calmed down, you were actually like, you know what? It's actually quite cool. It's a little bit bonkers. I like it.
I'm not too proud to admit. I'm not too proud. I'm not too proud to admit that I would genuinely had spat my dummy out.
Mate, I'm not going to go into the detail. If you want to know, right, you want to know the detail, or you want to see more occasion when Baz or myself spit our dummies out, then come along and join us in Nuffles Nomads. It's hilarious.
Definitely love to have you in there. Like, the bigger it gets, the more chance we stand are having big groups of people meeting up, and that's the shit that I just love so much.
I got a question for you.
Oh, go on.
What do you do if you want to get to a tournament before the end of October, mate? It's a long time to wait.
It certainly is, and weirdly enough, I've just pulled up a list on my screen right now.
So you on the NAF website, or you're on the other one?
I am on NAF currently.
Cool.
And excluding, there were 2 tournaments that were really short notice, as in this Saturday, so I cut them off the top, and we're going from as soon as a week on Saturday all the way to Global, which we'll talk about in a minute. So We're going to do a quick rundown of some NAF sanctioned tournaments that are coming up across the UK, starting next weekend towards the beginning of April. So we've got Beast, spelt BE4ST. That's in Peterborough in Cambridgeshire. That's on the 16th of March. Then we've
That
got
one's
Mighty
17th of March, I think, that one, mate.
Oh, really? It's
I
the
definitely,
16th,
yeah,
yeah?
I think they've put them in the wrong order. The end. Oh no, you're right. It's the 16th. Must be a 2-day because it's got an end date of the 17th.
Oh, maybe it is. So that's a
Yeah,
two-day.
must be a 2-day of that one.
Oh, lovely. So then we've got Mightier Than the Sword Bowl, which is South Yorkshire, Sheffield. Not too far from me, but sadly I cannot attend because I'm busy. That is the 16th. Then we've got another one in Yorkshire, Mad Magical Mishaps Open. North
That one's
Yorkshire.
Dungeon Bowl, that one.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Nice.
that's a Dungeon Bowl one.
So if you fancy some Dungeon Bowl, guys, get yourself to Stockton-on-Forest on the 17th of March. Not for me, Dungeon Bowl, Gary.
I think it's great when you've got a bunch of mates sitting around with some beers and you literally are doing it for shits and giggles.
Yeah, maybe so. Then we've got Blood Bowl Cryptic Cabin Cup in Berkshire Warfield on the 23rd of March. God, I don't even know how to pronounce that next one. Bribby Spring Break.
Yeah, these are all the 23rd, aren't they?
They are. There's quite a few on the same day. That's in Brighton on the 23rd. Then we've got the Langdon Bowl 2 in Ipswich on the 23rd as well. The NIBB March Madness 4. Wow, 4. So it must be a success if they're on to the fourth one.
Nice.
In Lisbon, Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland, yeah.
So if we've got anybody across the
again.
Irish Sea listening on 23rd, get yourself down to the March Madness 4. And we've got Northeast Doubles up in Newcastle on the 23rd as well. Wow, that 23rd is a popular day, isn't it, Gary?
Yeah, there's still even more as well. So there's the Northeast Doubles, and there's another one. I've got to say this one myself. Wibble Bowl. I love that name.
That's in my home county, West Yorkshire, in Leeds.
It's in Leeds, yeah.
Again, sadly,
You're not going?
I am busy. No, I'm busy. I'm busy, mate. Just stuff already booked in calendar, unfortunately. So I'm probably going to. You know what, mate? I'll be honest with you. It's not going to be the summer until I really get to another tournament, which is depressing. Then we've got. I love the name of this one, me personally. The Easter Bonnet Bash in Folkestone in Kent on the 30th of March. And then, Gary, what have we got right at the very bottom on the 6th of April?
It's not right at the bottom, but yeah, on the 6th of April, there is one called Glow Bowl, which is in Wiltshire in Swindon. So it's part of the Southwest tournaments. So there's a series. I think the Southeast has one, and Northeast, Northwest. There's these regional series of events that if you go along to them and you place in a few, your points add up, or you take the best placings of 5 tournaments or something like that. I don't know how it works exactly. But basically, if you've got tournaments local to you, then get along to them, because the same people are going to probably be going to them. So we're planning. Me and Brian are planning on going to a few of these. I've already mentioned it in our local league in the Troll Bowl chat.
Yeah.
And we've got already loads of people who are all starting to think about going to some of these tournaments now. So the reason why we were going to go to where we're going to Glow Bowl is a bit further down the week afterwards. Is Cake or Death in Yeovil.
All right. Yeah.
That only had 24 seats and it was already full. We were going to go to that.
All right. Okay.
But Glow Bowl's just as good, and it's in Swindon, a bit further for us. But and I think this one as well in Swindon is at the location of the 2-day. Is it Thread Bowl? It's called.
All right. So,
yeah. Thread Bowl went on sale on Sunday, and I think that's probably sold out already. I think they were expecting it to sell out in an hour or two.
Quite a popular one. So what we'll do is at the end of every episode moving forward, we'll give an updated list. Probably mention, for example, I would imagine when we talk about tournaments at the end of the next episode, we'll mention Glow Bowl again, but we'll sort of like inch the list down a little bit further at a time so people can see what's coming up in their area. And you just watch. I'm telling you now, there's 3 on there in Yorkshire that I can't attend because of dates. I guarantee for the rest of the summer there'll be no more anywhere near me when I'm free.
Mate, there's quite a few. There's East Yorkshire as well. Hull, is that near you?
About an hour's drive, not too far.
It's not too bad. There's a few in East Yorkshire and Hull. No, you're absolutely right, man. There doesn't seem to be too many.
We'll have to see. I don't mind travelling if I've got to.
York
is only about 40, 50 minutes away.
Yeah, so that's a team challenge, I think, by the looks of it, that one.
Oh, might have to recruit some friends. We'll see a little bit close to the time. But on that
Cool.
note, that's your tournament update, guys. And I think we're all done and dusted, aren't we, Gary?
Mate, it's 2 hours, right? That's we needed Steve to keep us in check, didn't we?
Yeah, just to wrangle us and be like, stop talking shit about percentages. But no, thank you very much for joining me, Gary.
Mate, thank you for that. Thank you for having me.
I enjoyed recording it, even about the percentages. So it's, if they don't like listening to it, then it's their loss because I had a great time.
Wait, we just have to ring each other up, just talk shit for an hour or two, and record it and put it on. And if anybody listens to it, great. And if not, we've had a good old gin mic, haven't we?
Yeah, that's it, definitely. So on that note, mate, I'll close out the show. But thank you very much for coming on, and I'll definitely be having you on for another one. And everyone, take care, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.
Cheers all.